Book of Heaven, Volume 19, 23rd to the 29th of July 1926. Page 137 to 147. July 23, 1926. Fears of being left by Jesus. One who lives in the divine will, loses every way out. Neither can Jesus leave her, nor can she leave Jesus. The creation is mirror, the divine will is life. After much waiting and longing for the coming of my sweet Jesus, I was thinking to myself, how shall I go on, if the one who forms my life leaves me alone and abandoned? How can I possibly live? And if I do live, because now I understand how it is not the pains that make one die. If it were so, after so many of his privations I would be dead. At the most, they make one feel death, but they are unable to give it. They make one live as though under a press, squeezed, crushed, but the supreme will alone has the power of death. But while I was thinking of this, my adorable Jesus moved in my interior and made himself seen with a little gold chain in his hands, delighting in making it pass between me and himself, in such a way that we remained bound together. And with love and goodness, all paternal, he told me, "My daughter, why do you fear that I may leave you? Listen, I cannot tolerate this fear in you. You must know that the condition in which I have placed you, the sea of my will that flows inside and outside of you, to which, voluntarily, not by force, you gave yourself, has expanded its boundaries so much that neither I nor you will find the way out. So, if you want to leave me, you will not find the way, and as much as you may go around, you will always go around within the endless boundaries of my will, more so, since your acts done in it have closed every way out for you. And if I wanted to leave you, I could not, because I would not know where to go to place myself outside of the boundaries of my will. My will is everywhere, and wherever I might go, I would always find myself together with you. At the most, I act like someone who possesses a large house, and since he loves someone else who is inferior to him, in mutual agreement, one takes the house and the other goes. Now, since the house is large, he ranges about and moves around within his house. The other person loses sight of him and laments, but wrongly, if the house belongs to him, how can he leave her? One does not leave his own things, so, either he will come home soon, or maybe he is already there, in some apartment of his own house. Therefore, since I have given you my will as your house, how can I leave you and separate from it? As powerful as I am, in this I am impotent, because I am inseparable from my will. At the most I range within my boundaries and you lose sight of me, but it is not that I leave you, and if you went around within our boundaries, immediately you would find me. So, instead of fearing, wait for me, and when you least expect it, you will find me all clasped to you." After this, I was doing my usual acts in the supreme volition, and the whole order that one must have in the divine will, what one must do and where one can reach, in sum, everything that Jesus himself has taught me, became present before my mind. So I thought to myself, how will creatures be able to do all this? If it seems to me that I, who draw from the source, don't do everything, leave many things behind and do not reach that height that Jesus tells me, what must it be for those who will draw from my tiny little fount? And Jesus, moving in my interior, told me, "My daughter, of the many things that I created in creation, you do not use nor enjoy all of them, and many others you do not know. But if they don't serve you, they serve others. If you are not the one who enjoys them and knows them, others do enjoy them and know them. And if creatures don't take everything, all things still serve my great glory, and to make known my power, my majesty, my great love. And the multiplicity of many created things makes known the wisdom, the value of the divine Maker, who is so skillful that there is nothing he cannot do. Now, if in the creation of the world he released so many things which were to serve man's nature, and which were to be like a mirror in which, by reflecting himself in it, man was to recognize his Creator, and all created things were to be paths through which he could return to the paternal womb from which he came, much more necessary is it to make known more things about the kingdom of my will, which is to serve as life of the soul, and as the center in which God must have his throne. Now, the multiplicity of the things I have made known to you serves to show what this divine will is, how there is nothing more important, more holy, more immense, more powerful, more beneficial, and which has the virtue of giving more life than it does. All other things, as good and holy as they may be, are always in the secondary order. It alone has always the first place, and wherever it is not present, there cannot be life. So, the many knowledges about my will serve my will itself as glory and triumph, and will serve the creatures as path to find life and to receive it. The height and immensity of my will serve creatures so as to never let them stop, but always move forward in order to reach it as much as they can. And the multiplicity of these knowledges will serve the freedom of each one to take what they want. In fact, each knowledge contains life. If the veil of each knowledge is broken, they will find in it, as queen, the life of my will. The more they take and do, the more the life of my will grow in them. Therefore, be attentive in manifesting the qualities, the infinite riches it possesses, so that the heaven of my will may be more beautiful, more charming, more majestic, as indeed it is, than the heaven of creation, so that, enraptured by its beauty, by the goods it contains, all may yearn to come to live in the kingdom of my will. July 26, 1926. The 4 degrees of the living in the supreme will. I continue in my usual abandonment in the supreme volition, and my always lovable Jesus, on coming, told me, "My daughter, the light of the sun is not enjoyed equally by all, not because of the sun, since my works, containing the universal good, do good to all with no restriction of any kind, but because of creatures. Imagine a person who remains in his room. He does not enjoy all the vividness of the light, and if he enjoys a mild light, he does not enjoy its heat. There is someone else, then, who is outside of the built-up area. He enjoys more light, he feels the heat of the sun. The heat purifies and disinfects the putrid air, and in enjoying the purified air he becomes stronger and feels healthier. So, the second person enjoys more of the goods that the sun brings to the earth. But, move forward. There is a third person who goes and puts himself at that point in which the solar rays hit the surface of the earth. This one feels invested by its rays, he feels burned by the heat of the sun. The vividness of its light is such that, his eyes being filled with it, he can hardly look at the earth. He sees himself as though transfused, one could say, into the very light. He feels little of the earth, of himself, and only because he has his feet on the ground, but he lives only for the sun. See what a great difference exists between the first, the second and the third. But, move even further. A fourth person takes flight into the solar rays, and rises up to the center of its sphere. This one remains burned by the intensity of the heat that the sun contains in its center. The intensity of the light eclipses him completely, in such a way that he remains dissolved, consumed, within the sun itself. This fourth person can no longer look at the earth nor think of himself, and if he does look, he will look at light, he will feel fire. So, for him all things have ended, light and heat have taken the place of his life. What a difference between the third and the fourth. However, all this difference does not depend on the sun, but on creatures, and on how they expose themselves to the light of the sun. Now, the sun is the image of my will which, more than sun, shoots its rays to convert those who want to live in its kingdom completely into light and love. These people are the image of the 4 degrees of the living in my will. One can say that the first one does not live in its kingdom, but only in the light which, from my kingdom, the sun of my will diffuses to all. One can say that he is outside of its boundaries, and if he enjoys a limited light, it is because of the nature of light, which diffuses everywhere. His nature, his weaknesses and passions form as though a house around him. They form infected and putrid air, and in breathing it, he lives as sickly and without liveliness of strength in doing good. But in spite of all this, he is resigned, he bears to his best the encounters of life, because the light of my will, mild as it may be, always brings its good. The second is the image of one who has entered the first steps of the boundaries of the kingdom of the supreme will. This one enjoys not only more light, but also the heat, therefore the air he breathes is pure, and in breathing it, he feels passions die within him, he is constant in good, he bears the crosses not only with resignation, but with love. However, since he is at the first steps of the boundaries, he looks at the earth and feels the weight of the human nature. On the other hand, the third is the image of one who has advanced into the boundaries of this kingdom, and its light is such and so great as to make him forget everything. He no longer feels anything of himself, good, virtues, crosses, change into his own nature. The light eclipses him, transforms him, and just barely allows him to look from afar at what no longer belongs to him. The fourth is the happiest, because he is the image of one who not only lives in my kingdom, but has acquired it. This one undergoes the total consummation in the Supreme Son of my will. The eclipse caused by its light is so intense, that he himself becomes light and heat, nor can he look at anything else but light and fire, and all things convert for him into light and love. Therefore, there will be a difference of degrees in the kingdom of my will according to how much creatures will want to take from its goods. But the first degrees will be spurs and paths in order to reach the last one. For you, then, who must make it known, there is all the necessity to live in the last degree. July 29, 1926. Everything that our Lord did invested the whole creation by virtue of the divine will. Who will put all creation in feast once again? I was doing my usual rounds in the kingdom of the supreme volition, and as I arrived at the point of what the divine will had done in the humanity of our Lord, I looked at his tears, his sighs, his moans and everything he did, invested with the light of his will. Its rays were beaded with the tears of Jesus, filled with his sighs, invested with his sorrowful and loving moans. And since the creation is filled and invested with the divine will, as its rays of light invested everything, they beaded all created things with his tears. All things were invested with his sighs, with his love, and all moaned together with Jesus. Now, sweet Jesus came out from within my interior, and leaning his head on my forehead, told me, "My daughter, by sinning, the first man lost a divine will, and therefore my humanity was needed, united with the eternal Word, which was to sacrifice the human will of my humanity entirely and completely in order to reacquire this divine will, so as to give it back to the creature. So, my humanity gave not even a breath of life to its human will, but kept it only to sacrifice it, and to pay for the freedom that man had taken, of rejecting this supreme will with so much ingratitude, and as he lost it, all of its goods, its happiness, its dominion, its sanctity, failed him, everything failed him. If man had lost something human given to him by God, a saint could have rendered it back to him, but since he lost a divine will, another man and God was needed, who would be able to give it back to him. Now, had I come upon earth to redeem him, one drop of my blood, one little pain of mine would have been enough to put him in safety, but since I came not only to save him, but to give him back my will, which he had lost, this divine will wanted to descend into all my pains, into my tears, into my sighs and moans, into everything I did and suffered, in order to reacquire the dominion in all and over all human acts, and therefore be able to form, once again, its kingdom in the midst of creatures. So, as a little child, when I cried, wailed, moaned, my divine will, more than solar ray, invested all creation with my tears, with my moans and sighs. The stars, the sun, the starry sky, the sea, the little flower, all cried, moaned, wailed and sighed, because the divine will presence in me was the same as that which reigned in all creation, and therefore, as though naturally, the stars cried, the sky moaned, the sun wailed, the sea sighed. The light of my will brought my echo into all created things, and repeating my acts, they kept company with their Creator. Oh, if you knew the assault that the divine majesty received in hearing my crying, my moans and sighs in all creation. All created things, animated by my will, prostrate at the foot of the divine throne, deafened it with their moans, drew it with their tears, moved it to pity with their sighs and prayers, and my pains, reverberating in them, bound it to surrender the keys of heaven, and implored that the kingdom of the divine will come upon earth once again. My celestial Father, moved to compassion and tenderness by his own will that cried, moaned, prayed and suffered in all his works, surrendered the keys and gave his kingdom once again. But in order to be sure, he placed it in my humanity, so that at the appropriate time he might give it back again to the human family. Here is the necessity for me to do the human actions and to descend into the order of the human actions, because my divine will was to take its dominion and substitute the order of its divine will in all the acts of creatures. See, then, how much this kingdom cost me, with how many pains I ransomed it. This is why I love it so much, and I want to establish it in the midst of creatures at any cost. But, tell me, my love, if everything you did was invested with the unity of the light of the supreme volition, since this will is one and cannot be detached nor separated from its acts, the creation is no longer alone, but has the company of your acts, of your love, of your moans. Therefore, there isn't that sepulchral silence you told me about the other time. And Jesus, all goodness, added, my daughter, you must know that as long as my humanity remained on earth, and as long as the sovereign queen also was there was no solitude nor sepulchral silence in the creation, because by virtue of the light of the divine will, wherever this will was, it spread as light, and diffusing in everything, it multiplied in all created things, and everywhere my act was repeated, because one was the will. This is so true, that the creation gave sensible signs both at my birth, and even more so at my death, to the point that the sun became dark, the stones split, the earth trembled, as if all were crying for their Creator, for their King. They cried for the one who had kept them in feast, who had broken their solitude and sepulchral silence, and, all feeling the bitterness of such a hard privation, they gave signs of sorrow and crying, and returned once again to the mourning of their solitude and silence. In fact, as I departed from the earth, the one who, in the light of my will, emitted the voice which, forming the echo, rendered the creation speaking and operating, was no longer there. It happened as to those metal instruments which, with artfulness, enclose the voice of one who speaks or sings. The instrument speaks, sings, cries, laughs, but this happens by virtue of the echo of the voice that has spoken. However, if the intelligence that produces that singing is taken away, the instrument remains mute. More so, since I did not come upon earth for the creation, but I came for man, and therefore everything I did, pains, prayers, moans, sighs, I left for the good of souls as more than a new creation. In fact, since everything I did was done by virtue of my creative power, everything is in the act of saving man. In addition to this, creation was made for man, in it he was to be the king of all created things. But by withdrawing from my divine will, man lost the regime, the dominion, nor could he form laws in the kingdom of creation as is usual with a king when he possesses a kingdom. In fact, having lost the unity of the light of my will, he was no longer able to rule, he had no more strength of dominion, his laws had no value, creation was for him like a people that rebels against the king and makes of him its laughing stock. And this is why my humanity was immediately recognized by the whole creation as its king, because it felt in me the strength of the union of one single will. But as I departed, it remained without king again, enclosed in its silence, waiting again for someone who, in the kingdom of my will, would emit his voice to let it resound in it. But do you know who she is who will put all creation in feast once again, the one who will form its echo and will render it speaking again? It is you, my daughter, who will take back the dominion, the regime, in the kingdom of my will. Therefore, be attentive, and let your flight in my volition be continuous.